Chapter 91. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But the body ain't exactly built for that kind of magic. Waving your hands to set up a formation. Possible, sure, but you're powerless right now. Meanwhile, back on the Heavenly Tao Golden List, Zayayozi was completely clueless that everything he was doing was being broadcast to all of Jojo. He gazed down into the deep valley, a flicker of emotion crossing his face. He murmured. This way, nobody will bother them. He didn't hesitate a second longer. He transformed into a streak of light and vanished into the distance. That's when everyone in Jojo finally understood Zayayozi's formation was meant to protect that peaceful village from intruders, Dachin. He feels guilty, so he leaves behind the fountain of youth. He's afraid future generations will stumble upon the valley, so he drops those hints. If you're chasing the secret to immortality in immortal Changchun Valley, you gotta find Zayayozi. Watching Zayayozi disappear, Yingyun's face lit up with interest. He chuckled. What a guy. As an emperor, Yingyun saw right through Zayayozi's game. The fountain of youth was probably juiced up by Zayayozi using the altar's leftover mojo. It'd lose its power if taken out of immortal Changchun Valley, so, if anyone wanted to live forever, they'd be stuck in the valley, sipping spring water every few months. Talk about being cut off from the world. That's a hard pill to swallow for ambitious emperors and heroes. Plus, the formation seals off the valley, finding it would cost a fortune. That'd make some emperors think twice about hunting down immortal Changchun Valley. Even if someone did stumble into the valley and learned about the immortal springs magic, they wouldn't rush to action, wanting to get the most out of it. Zayayozi was really looking out for the villagers. Yingyun had to give him props for that. After all, the villagers' kindness in nursing Zayayozi back to health had been paid for by him killing their master. Even after being kicked out, he still did this. Gotta admire the guy. Across Jojo, the other dynasties clocked the real meaning behind Zayayozi's move. They all craved immortality, but the thought of being cooped up in that isolated village, just stretching out their lifespan, was a deal-breaker. If the immortal spring still worked outside the valley, it'd be worth the hunt. But as it was, the price was just too high. Sure, a few emperors wanted to spend their golden years chilling in that village, and they sent people to Dali, but compared to all of Kyushu, that was just a drop in the bucket. And so, the scene faded. Zayayozi hit the road again, wandering around Kyushu, but this time, he wasn't so lonely. He took on a few disciples and taught them Taoism. There was Wu Xingyun, Wu Yazi, Li Qiushui, and Li Canghai, ranked by seniority. Naturally, Wu Xingyun was the oldest, Wu Yazi was the senior, and Li Qiushui and Li Canghai were the younger apprentices. He also had a couple of honorary disciples, the most promising one being a kid named Ding Chuanxiu. Before long, they'd unofficially formed a sect. After giving it some thought, Zayayozi christened the sect, the Xiaoyao sect. But once the sect was up and running, Zayayozi got hung up on how to train his disciples. He knew he was a one-of-a-kind talent, and even those Taoist scriptures he'd handed out, he couldn't just copy the old Taoists' teaching style. After mulling it over, he decided to cook up some new martial arts, built on the foundation of the everlasting Changchun Gong. Slowly but surely, Zayayozi churned out some moves: the Baiming Divine Art, Lingbo Microstep, Zio Wuxian Gong, Chapter 105 Holy Cow. Zayayozi's aiming for immortality. To Jojo's shock, Zayayozi whipped up all kinds of martial arts, especially the Baiming Divine Art and Zio Wuxian Gong. One could suck up other people's internal energy and use it as your own, the other could mimic any martial art in the world, even improving on the original. Just one of these random books could set off a free-for-all in Jojo. But for Zayayozi, it was just filling out the numbers. Watching this, everyone in Jojo was floored. This was just too much. Remember, Su Fu spent ages crafting the Holy Heart Sutra, drawing from every martial art he knew, and after mastering it, then he dished out that legendary skill. But this Zayayozi, whipping this stuff up out of thin air, was even better than the Sacred Heart technique, and way more mysterious. Zayayozi, churning out this skill, had no idea what the people of Jojo were thinking, and just like that, the years ticked by. On the screen, 10 years flew by. the kids had grown up, and their skills had gone through the roof. Wuyazi had the highest level of cultivation and was the biggest chick magnet, so much so that it stirred up a ton of jealousy, hard feelings, and straight-up hatred, like, Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui were both crushing on Wuyazi, but while Wuyazi was flirting with Wu Xingyun, he was also messing around with Li Qiushui, but deep down, he was really sweet on his younger apprentice, Li Canghai. Neither Wu Xingyun nor Li Qiushui had any idea that the quiet little junior apprentice was their biggest competition, so Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui were constantly at each other's throats, seeing each other as the enemy, fighting tooth and nail. Meanwhile, while they were busy going at it, Wuyazi was hooking up with Li Canghai on the side. The relationships were so messed up, it made everyone in Kyushu's head spin. What a player, thought some people just sighed, blown away by Wuyazi's game. Normal people can barely handle 2 relationships, but this guy's juggling 3, and he's doing it like a pro, without dropping a single ball. Gotta hand it to Wuyazi, he's a genius. Tian Shan. Ha ha ha. Little junior apprentice. It was her all along. The Tian Shan child elder cackled, sounding a bit lonely. She thought back to how she had forced herself to practice the eternal spring kung fu and suffered a backlash, leaving her stuck looking like a kid and calling herself the Tian Shan child granny. Truth be told, when she was 26, she had a shot at getting her true appearance back, but Li Qiushui had deliberately ruined it, killing any chance of recovery. And to get back at Li Qiushui, she had carved deep slashes across her face, completely messing up her looks. The two had been jealous of each other, and out of envy and hate, they'd framed each other and taken revenge. It had all led to this miserable mess. Qin Dynasty. This dynasty was a bit off the beaten path. On the fringe of Kyushu, in the main hall, a woman wearing a veil stared, her eyes filled with regret. She let out a long sigh. Is that how it was? That was all she said, but the pain in her voice was unmistakable. Sea of stars. Master still got it. Su Xinghe glanced at the stone wall behind him. He knew that with Master Wuyazi's powers, he'd know about the changes on the Heavenly Tao Golden List by now, via the stone wall, but what would he think when he saw this? At that moment, the heavenly screen kept rolling. Zaiyozi didn't really care about the love triangle his apprentices were caught up in. He'd just taken on disciples so that he could pass on the Taoist temple's legacy. As soon as his apprentices had finished their training, they'd taken off. I'm just a wandering Taoist trying to become immortal. Chapter 92. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Standing atop Mount Xiaoyao, the leader of the Xiaoyao sect, Zaiyozi, clasped his hands behind his back. True energy radiated from him as he spoke softly. After a decade of honing his skills, Zaiyozi felt he'd reached the pinnacle of being a grandmaster. No further progress was possible. He felt the constraints placed on him by the heavens and earth, so he intended to shatter those chains. Cultivation. Throughout the land of Kyushu, everyone who looked at Zaiyozi, standing on the cliff's edge in his Taoist robe, looking like a celestial being, was stunned. Cultivation. Over the past 10 years, Zaiyozi had never displayed such extraordinary talent. Everyone assumed he'd reached his limit, but now, with the word cultivation from his lips, all of Kyushu erupted in disbelief. Everyone sought martial arts, yet remained wanting, and this man was aiming for immortality. Miles away at Tianmen, Zhang Sanfeng was striding forward. Cultivate to immortality. Hearing Zaiyozi's words, he stopped dead in his tracks, his face serious. He murmured to himself, are there really immortals in this world? As a grandmaster, his usually calm state of mind was shaken. What is an immortal? Beyond the ordinary, ethereal. In all of Kyushu, becoming a grandmaster was considered the ultimate achievement. The grandmaster transcends and surpasses this limit, but still, it's a human realm. If anyone else had said they wanted to cultivate immortality, Zhang Sanfeng would have laughed it off, but coming from Zaiyozi, it was enough to shock him to his core. Was it truly possible to transcend the mortal world and become an immortal? In the Han Dynasty. Cultivation into immortality. That's BS. Watching the Taoist gold list in the sky, Liu Bang sneered. I don't believe in gods or immortals. But the Taoist gold list. Fan Kuai scratched his head, speaking without thinking. seeing the pitying looks from Zhang Liang, Xiao He, and the others, he stopped short, confused. Had he said something wrong again? Heaven! Tao! Lu Bang's face darkened, but seeing Fan Kuai's innocent expression, he sighed in exasperation. He really didn't believe in this so-called cultivation, but there was no explaining the Tiandao gold list. During the Ming Dynasty. Cultivation. Zhu Yuanzhang frowned, pondered for a moment, then shook his head. I don't buy it. Zaiyozi is talented, sure, but he's still just a man. Besides. His eyes flickered, thinking back to the battle at Tianmen. Back then, Zaiyozi had shocked everyone, but he hadn't seemed like an immortal at all, had he? In the Qin Dynasty, Yingyun looked up at the sky, a hesitant expression on his face. Cultivation. The word seemed absurd, however, since something like heaven existed, there was no reason to believe immortals couldn't exist. Without thinking, Yingyun wanted Yingyun's opinion. After all, even though Yingyun was pessimistic, he was almost always right. But when he looked around for him, his expression darkened. Chapter 106, Yingyun, caught trying to sneak away. Ugh! Yingyun took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He'd repeatedly ordered Meng Tian to keep the king of Qin sword in hand and to keep a close eye on Yingyun. He definitely shouldn't let him sleep. The results were clear. After sleeping for so long, Yingyun wasn't as sleepy. He was just a little tired now. He was salty, and he'd been standing there for so long without even being offered a seat. He had never suffered like this. So, Yingyun was planning to slip away. After all, the Tiandao gold ranking had revealed the third place, and he was next. Better to bail while he could. Otherwise, when the Tiandao gold list exposed him, he would be swarmed and interrogated. That would be awful. Time to go. Wasn't playing around with Wu Ju better than babysitting these old geezers? But just as Yingyun was about to sneak away while everyone was distracted by Zaiyozi, Yingyun glanced over. Their eyes met. The world seemed to stop. Seeing Yingyun trying to slip away, Yingyun felt his anger rising. You! What do you think you're doing? Slowly, Yingyun suppressed his fury and spoke carefully. Having seen Yingyun's assessment of the top people on the peerless list, Yingyun had begun to change his view of his unmotivated son. He'd almost started instinctively looking to Yingyun first when he was unsure of something. But now, seeing him trying to sneak off, Yingyun suddenly felt a pain in his gut. The little traitor. Couldn't he at least show some support? Huh? Hearing Yingyun's quiet voice, everyone who was captivated by Zaiyozi's cultivation snapped to attention and followed Yingyun's gaze. They were all dumbfounded. Well. The ninth prince was trying to bolt. Everyone knew that before the ninth prince had fallen asleep, they had given him the side-eye and carried on with their day. After all, the ninth prince was too salty, so they weren't surprised, but now, he was awake, and he was trying to ditch the whole thing. This was unbelievable. If it had been any other prince, they wouldn't have been able to get away, they wouldn't have even dared to breathe. Thinking of this, everyone glanced at Fusu, Hu Hai, and the others who were standing obediently and following Yingyun's orders, not daring to slack off. They couldn't help but sigh. Only the ninth prince. In that moment, for some reason, all the officials present felt a little admiration for Yingyun. It was a Hail Mary. Ahem. Yingyun, caught red-handed, felt a little embarrassed, but he brazened it out. I need to use the restroom. That he needed to go, Yingyun couldn't even deny him that, right? Heh. Yingyun's face grew colder. Pointing in the direction Yingyun was headed, he said, then why are you heading outside the Zhongtai Palace? Last I checked, there isn't a restroom out there. The kid was still trying to lie to him. This made Yingyun even angrier. Chapter 93. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Well, Yingyun's face flickered when he heard Yingyun speak, crap, that was a close one, . Ahem. Yingyun coughed, casually stepped back, and said coolly, huh? What's that? Just kidding, I was mistaken, keep calm and play it cool, that's the ticket, hang on, didn't I want to bolt and get caught, star. Asterisk no biggie, star. Quiet. The whole Zhongtai palace was dead silent. Everyone hung their heads, barely breathing. Whoosh. Yingyun took a deep breath, he didn't even know what to say. Looking at Yingyun's deadpan bull, the anger kinda fizzled out, and he almost started laughing. This goofball always has an excuse, asterisk the crazy part is, I know he's lying, and he knows I know, star. Asterisk yet he can say it with a straight face, star. Asterisk always has, star. Alright then, shaking his head, Yingyun's anger faded. He pointed at the image on the golden Tao list and said heavily, this whole immortality thing. I want to hear your take. Fail, and I'll box you up, ship you to the border, and you can cultivate with the troops. Truth was, Yingyun was ticked off cause he thought Yingyun was wasting his potential. If this lazy bum wasn't such a slacker, I could trust him with the empire, asterisk but as it is, no way, no how, star. So, he decided to test Yingyun. Yingyun often had the princes over to grill them on their studies. The Tiandao Golden List just threw a curveball. Now, he had a ready-made test. As for the border thing, that was just to scare him straight. Although, if I'm really not happy with what he says, maybe the border would do him some good. Huh? Yingyun's eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion in his mind, asterisk why is the old man so interested in me all of a sudden, star. Asterisk give me a break, star. Asterisk I just want to chill, star. Asterisk why kick me out of retirement. Star. Still, immortality. Yingyun looked over at Zayayozi, who was all fired up about cultivating. He shrugged and lost interest. Chains of heaven and earth, asterisk pretty sure Zayayozi can't break those, star. Still, Zayayozi was as good as it got in the Grandmaster League. But Yingyun wasn't impressed. A Grandmaster's just a Grandmaster, asterisk no real transformation, star. Asterisk can't escape the natural order, so this cultivation is just drifting, going nowhere, star. But, since Yingyun asked, Yingyun paused, looked at Zayayozi, and said flatly, it'll probably flop. How so? Yingyun's eyes flickered, fail. Yingyun had his own thoughts about Zayayozi's chances, Zayayozi was still just a master at that Tianmen fight. Why did Yingyun think so? Does he think like me, asterisk or has he got something else in mind, star. Chapter 107, Swimming Against the Tide. Zayayozi set sail. Cultivation's fighting the natural order. Yingyun met Yingyun's stare, then said calmly, going against the grain's always a rough road. He remembered his own break through the mortal realm, cracking open the gates of heaven with his sword. The hardships and dangers were beyond anything anyone in Jojo could understand now. Heaven. The officials were flabbergasted. The 9th prince was losing it. Immortality's one thing, asterisk but now we're talking heaven. Star. Then they remembered the Tiandao Golden List and clammed up. Asterisk Golden Tao List, that's heaven, right? So is it that crazy, star? Cultivation defies heaven. Yingyun frowned. The Heavenly Tao Golden List was evidence, but it still felt off. Asterisk can mortals really touch heaven? Star. Your Highness, is this heaven? You're talking about the Heavenly Tao Golden List? Yingyun spoke up, he'd thought the 9th master was a super talent who was playing dumb. But he'd talked himself out of it. Now Yingyun was talking about heaven, so his old idea popped back up. Could it be the 9th prince is really holding back? Dunno. Yingyun shrugged and glanced at the Tiandao Golden List, he'd defied the natural order when he became a land immortal. But he'd never seen anything like the Heavenly Tao Golden List. Thinking about it, maybe the Heavenly Tao Golden List is even higher up. Oh. Yingyun had expected a huge revelation, so Yingyun's response stunned him, asterisk right, star. Asterisk the 9th prince is bright, but how would a mortal know about heaven? Star. Yingyun suddenly realized. I jumped the gun, asterisk the 9th prince hasn't even studied martial arts, so how could he know about anything, beyond martial arts? I got ahead of myself, star. Yingyun looked at Yingyun apologetically, he clasped his hands for a moment, then backed off, the officials who had perked up when Yingyun spoke just shook their heads and shut up when they saw him back down. Don't even think about leaving, or I'll send you to the border to fight the Huns. Finally, Yingyun glared at Yingyun and said a final warning. Then he looked back at the Tiandao Golden List, * cultivation, ***, even I'm a bit curious. How's Zaiyozi gonna pull off immortality? Fight the Huns, Yingyun's mouth twitched. He remembered he'd sent out several batches of troops he'd picked up by logging in, * they should be kicking butt, right? Oh well, * gotta survive, * Yingyun gave up on reasoning with his dad and looked at the Golden Dao list, * I'm kinda curious myself, what's Zaiyozi up to, * he's the most talented dude I've seen so far, *. Chapter 94. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 7-year-old Grandmaster, fewer than 20 Grandmasters in the world. Now, not even 30, and he's already thinking about defying destiny and becoming an immortal. That's some serious talent. Not bad, second only to me, of course. What's he gonna do? And it's not just the Qin Dynasty that's wondering. At this very moment, countless eyes across all of Zhou are glued to the Heavenly Dao Golden List, waiting. Most people still think this whole immortal cultivation thing is a load of baloney, but hey, there's a little curiosity, right? Zaiyozi's life has been pretty legendary so far. Maybe he can actually pull off a miracle. On the Heavenly Dao Golden List, the images keep rolling. Zaiyozi's gone. He didn't say goodbye to his disciples. Just like before, he quietly slipped away, barely leaving a trace, and with Zaiyozi's departure, Wu Xingyun and Li Qiushui, already at each other's throats, immediately split up for good. Wu Yazi, left holding the bag, had to step up and become the second-generation head of the Xiaoyao sect, plus, he gathered up all those random disciples Zaiyozi had recruited and took them as his own, planning to cultivate the third generation of the Xiaoyao sect. But, wouldn't you know it, Ding Chuanxiu, the disciple he favored most, turned out to be a real snake in the grass. He teamed up with Li Qiushui, fueled by both love and hate, and shoved Wu Yazi off a cliff. But Wu Yazi got lucky and survived. Instead, he set up this elaborate game, hoping to find his successor as the next leader of Xiaoyao sect, Vulture Palace. So, junior brother isn't dead yet. Watching the scene on the Heavenly Dao Golden List, a flicker of emotion crossed Tianshan's face, and she instinctively wanted to go rescue Wu Yazi, but she froze, right as she was about to leave. Does junior brother even want to see me? That thought hit her hard, and with a sigh, she stayed put. Qin Dynasty, a wave of shame washed over Li Qiushui, and she remained silent for ages, not moving a muscle. Langhuan blessed land. Wu Yazi watched Zaiyozi take off, sighed softly, and murmured. Master, I messed up. Over the years, the Xiaoyao sect has fallen apart, to the point where there isn't even a decent successor in sight. And a big part of that is Wu Yazi's fault. If he hadn't been so caught up between Wu Xingyun, Li Qiushui, and Li Songhai, maybe the Xiaoyao sect wouldn't have splintered and fallen so far. Well. With a heavy sigh, Wu Yazi felt a pang of guilt. He even considered having Su Xinghe carry him to Tianmen so he could beg forgiveness. Xingshue's sect, Ding Chuanxiu started to sweat a little. Sure, the three Xiaoyao elders are basically goners. Even if they came after him, he wouldn't be that scared. Worst case, he'd just run. But Ding Chuanxiu didn't think he stood a chance against Zaiyozi. One flick of the wrist and he'd be done for. Like Wu Yazi, Ding Chuanxiu wondered if he should head to Tianmen and plead guilty. But whatever these former Xiaoyao sect disciples thought, Zaiyozi in the picture didn't give a damn. The Heavenly Dao Golden List flashed again, and Zaiyozi was traveling across Zhou once more. A few years zipped by. And then, one day, on top of a mountain, Zaiyozi made up his mind. He was going overseas. He'd already traveled all over Zhou. Maybe not every inch of it, but he'd seen a lot. Still, he was clueless about this immortal cultivation thing. So this time, he figured he'd go looking for answers overseas. Chapter 108, Heading Overseas. Eternal Life. Jojo is stunned, overseas. Seeing Zaiyozi's choice, most people in Jojo were taken aback. The land of Jojo is already huge. But overseas? That's bigger than most people can even imagine. Remember that one dynasty that launched 7 expeditions to the west, pouring tons of resources and manpower into it for years? Even they barely scratched the surface of what's out there. But everyone knows, there are tons of secrets hidden overseas. Maybe even dynasties and countries like Jojo. But because of that endless ocean, no one can say for sure if there's a unified dynasty overseas. And now, Zaiyozi is heading out, which naturally piques everyone's curiosity. They're dying to know, what's the world like over there? Back during Su Fu's quest to find the real dragon, people caught a glimpse of the creatures living on Shenlong Island, where the real dragon supposedly hung out. But that was just a tiny speck compared to the rest of the overseas world. Hardly a good look at things. But now that Zaiyozi is going, he's obviously not going to get stuck on one island like Su Fu. He's after immortal cultivation. The places he visits might be way better than anything Su Fu ever saw. So, Zaiyozi hopped on a boat, crossed the ocean, and started his own quest for immortality. Stormy seas, rough waves, the vast ocean is dangerous as hell. The deep sea has swallowed countless lives. Every dynasty in Jojo knows to steer clear of it. Just one look is enough to scare people off. But in the picture, Zaiyozi stood on the bow, calm as can be in waves big enough to swallow anything. As a grandmaster, he's got the power to change the world, to a certain degree. He can also grab hold of the fortune of heaven and earth to help himself. So, waves that could destroy anything are no big deal to him. Plus, remember that Zaiyozi could go without food or water for a month, years ago. Now, he can even absorb spiritual power from the world and reach that legendary state of fasting. This scene really shocked Jojo again. If Zaiyozi wasn't so set on cultivating immortality, people would have sworn he'd already become an immortal. Time flew by, the years passed in a blur. Life at sea is boring and repetitive. Zaiyozi ran into a few islands. They had no people, but they were loaded with natural treasures. Even more treasures than a lot of dynasties in Jojo, 1,000-year-old ginseng, 10,000-year-old snow lotus, growing everywhere. This scene really rocked Jojo. Are there really that many treasures overseas? You bet everyone's hyped. Those patches of 1,000-year-old ginseng alone are worth more than the entire wealth of a small dynasty. And there are tons of other rare herbs no one can even name. That's enough to make a bunch of medium-sized dynasties lose their minds. Right then and there, several dynastic rulers facepalmed and started planning to build ships and head out to sea to hunt for treasure. Of course, that was a minority. Everyone knows that overseas is super dangerous. Zaiyozi got to those islands because he's a super powerful grandmaster. Everyone else would probably just end up at the bottom of the sea. The scene played on. Zaiyozi never stayed long on any one island, even on islands stacked with natural treasures. He only hung around for a few days, grabbing some of the oldest herbs, then, without a second thought, he was gone. Chapter 95. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Years flew by in a heartbeat. Zaiyozi didn't seem to have aged a day. He still wore the same pristine white Taoist robe as when he first set sail, but a closer look revealed a newfound depth in his eyes. He had to be pushing 50 by now, yet, his youthful appearance remained untouched, eternal youth. The thought couldn't help but cross the minds of the people of Jojo. After all, Eternal Spring Valley had been a major shock back in the day, but only Zaiyozi and his eldest disciple, Wu Xingyun, ever practiced the Eternal Spring technique, and Wu Xingyun had crippled himself in the process, so, people had largely forgotten about it, but seeing Zaiyozi now, it all came flooding back. Even the most powerful grandmasters eventually showed their age, unless some miracle occurred. What Zaiyozi exhibited could only be explained by one thing, eternal youth. At Tianmen, Su Fu watched the scene unfold. Immortality through some technique. A sneer twisted his lips. Dream on. The price he'd paid for immortality was beyond measure. and this Zayayozi thought he could achieve it with just a simple skill. Besides, his gaze lingered on Zayayozi, sprawled out on the steps with an air of indifference. Zayayozi was getting old. Not even a century. A far cry from his own lifespan. A surge of superiority washed over Su Fu. So what if Zayayozi was stronger? He would have the last laugh. Su Fu glanced at the heavenly Tao golden list and froze. Even the village that was known as immortal should have changed at this age, beginning to age, but Zayayozi still looked like he was in his 20s, with an even more profound look in his eyes. Back in Daqin, in Zhongtai Palace, Yingyun murmured, if I remember correctly, we're getting close to that time. While the heavenly Tao golden list didn't have explicit timestamps, Zayayozi had left traces during his travels through the 9 provinces. Even with some discrepancies, the approximate time frame couldn't be too far off, and in the image, Zayayozi still looked young. This didn't line up with the image of the old Taoist everyone had initially seen. What would happen to him in the next few years? The mystery piqued his curiosity. Chapter 109, Who preached in the beginning of time. The heavenly Tao golden list sped forward, and years melted away. Zayayozi's face remained unchanged, but his eyes seemed to hold the weight of the world. He'd visited countless overseas islands, most of them desolate havens for wildlife. He occasionally encountered people, but civilization was in its infancy, and they lived by hunting and gathering. Even if some islands held immortal herbs, Zayayozi didn't linger long. But he patiently stayed on inhabited islands, teaching them basic farming, pottery, and porcelain. He was a preacher in the dawn of time. Once the seeds of civilization were planted, he quietly moved on, to the uncivilized tribes. Zayayozi was a deity, a god. Even after he left, they built temples and golden statues, offering prayers and worship. They venerated him as a god. Zayayozi's eyes reflected a growing sense of understanding, though he never fully grasped it. Time ticked by. One day, while teaching a tribe to make fire, an indescribable feeling welled up within him as he gazed at the endless sea. In the beginning of time, who preached the truth? The words escaped his lips. In the vast, ancient past, before the 9 provinces existed, had someone like him traveled the world to share knowledge? If not, where did the knowledge come from? And if so, where was that person now? Boom! A surge of heavenly power coalesced around him. The world weariness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a sense of rebirth. He had broken free from his limitations and ascended to a higher plane of understanding. In the beginning of time, who preached the truth? Living beings are mere ants. How can they distinguish true gods from false idols? Does anyone remember how people ignited the way forward for the human race? Could such beings be called immortals? Immortal. Zayayozi recalled the tribesmen kneeling before him, using their most sacred title, but only he knew that he was just a grandmaster, a far cry from true immortality. Yet, these ignorant people worshipped him as such, and that, after years of wandering, was how he sought immortality. There are no immortals in the world, but those who seek so much will create immortals. He whispered softly, seeing through the illusion, and the heavenly power around him was almost palpable to the people of Zhou. Through the heavenly Tao golden list, the whole of Zhou trembled. Back in Daqin, Yingyun looked up at the heavenly Tao golden list, his eyes wide with terror. Of all the beings on the peerless list, Su Fu had been the most shocking, having swallowed phoenix blood and lived for 2,000 years, but Su Fu was still just a grandmaster, barely able to tap into the power of heaven and earth. Zayayozi was different. Even as a grandmaster, his aura alone dwarfed Su Fu. He surpassed every being on the current peerless list. I thought he was a body refiner back then. How foolish I was. Yingyun chuckled bitterly, recalling his earlier assessment of Zayayozi. How could anyone who could command the power of heaven and earth be compared to a mere body refiner? Realizing his mistake, Yingyun felt a wave of emotions. He had been too narrow-minded. Using the great trend of heaven and earth to achieve oneself. Yingyun nodded slightly, his eyes filled with admiration. Zayayozi was a true talent. For decades, he had been cultivating the great trend of heaven and earth, following the path of the ancients, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary realm of immortals, and now, he was on the verge of success. This must be what the ancient immortals were like. But without destruction, there is no construction. Yingyun shook his head, a hint of regret in his eyes. cultivating immortality meant defying the will of heaven. If one relied solely on the power of the heavens, how could they break free from this world and find true freedom? He called himself Zayayozi, but he had fallen into a trap, unable to escape. He had taken the wrong path. Chapter 96. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But that thought stopped Yingyun cold. Could it be, across the endless ages of JoJo, could someone else, like him, have smashed through the ceiling of this world and become a true immortal? After all, a land immortal, aware of the hidden rules of this realm, wouldn't find survival too tough. If someone did exist, where would they be hiding? Up at Tianmen, Su Fu was stunned. Even from a distance, cut off from the golden list of heavenly Tao, he could feel the raw power. It was too much. And the way Zayayozi channeled the power of the world, moving in perfect harmony with heavenly Tao, it was nothing like him. To fight him would be to fight the world itself. An impossible task. How could he even begin? Su Fu felt a shiver of fear as he remembered his bet with Zayayozi. He'd thought swallowing the phoenix blood, fusing the martial arts of JoJo, made him unbeatable, but Zayayozi had taken it to a whole new level. Borrowing the power of heaven and earth? Panic set in. The power of heaven and earth, it's all smoke and mirrors. Zayayozi, still sprawled on the steps, gave him a pitying look, took a swig of wine, and sneered. I failed. Now, are those ahead of me on the list successful? The first and second guys? Doubtful. Very doubtful. With a sigh, Zayayozi closed his eyes, turning away from the images in the sky. The golden list of heavenly Tao shifted its focus. Zayayozi, basking in the immortal list, thought he'd finally caught up to the ancient sages. He practically radiated enlightenment, but he kept preaching. He even ventured overseas, finding traces of a forgotten civilization. Overseas civilization? The crowd was in shock. Could there really be other worlds beyond JoJo? But it was clear this civilization was primitive, barely ahead of cavemen. Still, Zayayozi preached to them, and, because they had basic symbols, he wrote out some Taoist scriptures for them to learn. It was already more than his predecessors had ever accomplished. The scriptures themselves contained deep truths, and, of course, Zayayozi was hailed as a god. Chapter 110, Black Hair, White Hair, A Dream Sigh. The image showed Zayayozi as an object of worship. At the same time, the natives learned basic skills like farming and pottery, shedding their wild ways, and the Taoist canon. As it spread, the impact on their development was obvious. Soon, they had masters of martial arts. Besides some gaps in their knowledge, they were little different from the people back in JoJo. After laying the groundwork, Zayayozi withdrew, letting them grow on their own. Time marched on. The heavenly Tao golden list showed a primitive civilization slowly blossoming. A dynasty, still in its earliest stages, was taking shape. And the energy around Zayayozi became more and more intense. It felt like he was about to leave this world behind. Boom. One day, Zayayozi left his seclusion and went to the forest alone. He was ready to become an immortal. The feeling had been building for years, shedding the old skin to become something new, a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. That was true immortality, not just a title given by ignorant people, but a real state of being, recognized by the heavens, beyond even grandmaster level. Zayayozi called it immortal. He was convinced becoming an immortal was the only path to true freedom. Boom. Zayayozi sat cross-legged, decades of insights flashing through his mind. From a distance, he truly looked like a god, radiating Taoist energy. The power he'd gathered was immense. The forest fell silent. Only Zayayozi was left to achieve enlightenment. Back in JoJo, even from behind the heavenly Tao golden list, dynasties felt that power, and were stunned. It was too much. While armies ruled the lands of JoJo, and people respected dynasties. Even a grandmaster wouldn't dare threaten a dynasty lightly. The risk was too high, but Zayayozi was something else entirely. Even the greatest dynasties wondered if their armies of hundreds of thousands could stand against him. These armies weren't like the barbarians, collapsing the moment their leader fell. They were the best of the best. Formed into battle formations, even powerful martial artists wouldn't dare to approach. The consequences of their wrath were unimaginable. It was only through a balance of power that Tianmen, even under Emperor Shi Tian, hadn't already been wiped off the map. But now, everyone was hesitant, they could deal with grandmasters through traps or assassination. But an immortal? These immortal gods were nothing more than legends. And this made people pause and question whether they were able to compete with them. Everyone knew Zaiyozi was on another level, maybe only the most powerful dynasty could challenge him, boom. And just when everyone in Jojo was reeling from Zaiyozi's power, everything went wrong, a surge of heavenly power erupted from the golden list of heavenly Tao. Zaiyozi shot to his feet, trying to suppress it, but he was thrown back, coughing up blood. Heavenly power out of control. The scene shifted, and the peaceful forest was now a wreck. It was as if a massive explosion had gone off. Zaiyozi's robes were torn and stained with blood, he looked like hell. Chapter 97. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Standing among these ruins, you can't help but feel this profound sense of loneliness. What the heck is going on? Across the land of Kyushu, people were in shock. Just a moment ago, they were watching Zaiyozi in the mountains, totally dialed into the world's energy. It looked like he was on the verge of some major breakthrough, like he was about to transcend to a higher plane. Then, suddenly, total destruction. This complete reversal left everyone in Kyushu reeling, struggling to understand what they just saw. Qin. No way, that guy Nya blurted out, stunned. He had been following Zaiyozi closely. When Zaiyozi tapped into the world's energy, Nya felt something resonate within him. He thought, maybe his sword skills could evolve in a similar way. But seeing the total devastation now, he just couldn't process it. How could this happen? How could you go wrong when you're guided by the power of nature and the energies beyond our understanding? And Nya wasn't the only one. Kyushu erupted in chaos. From the imperial court to the martial arts circles, a wave of dread washed over everyone. Near the gates of Tianmen, Zhang Sanfeng also stopped in his tracks. He looked up at the sky, a contemplative expression on his face. What the heck just happened to Zaiyozi? It's all wrong. All of it. As everyone watched, Zaiyozi, standing amidst the ruins, threw his head back and laughed, but his laughter was laced with despair. The serene, unbothered demeanor he once wore was gone. He realized his path was a dead end. You can't achieve immortality by harnessing the world's energy. It's wrong. From the moment he chose this path, he was destined to fail. And there was no turning back. Ha ha ha. Zaiyozi laughed again, his voice a broken echo. At the same time, his youthful appearance began to fade rapidly, his hair turned white as snow, his face wrinkled as if years were passing in the blink of an eye. It was surreal. By the time everyone could react, Zaiyozi looked like an old man. It all came down to what was in his heart. The Zaiyozi from before had genuine hope, a burning desire for immortality and true freedom. But when he realized he was stuck on a dead-end road, that everything he had worked toward was a joke, his spirit broke. His heart died. Naturally, all the youthful vigor drained from him, replaced by the weight of old age and despair. No skill or magical treasure could fix what was broken inside, even phoenix blood or dragon essence couldn't restore Zaiyozi's youth. His heart was completely despondent. How could any elixir, no matter how potent, bring life back to a heart consumed by despair? Chapter 111, The End of Zaiyozi. A blessing from above. Zaiyozi's anguished laughter echoed through the ruins, reaching every corner of Kyushu. Everyone was completely lost. They couldn't understand how Zaiyozi, who had been preaching to the masses with the goal of transcending the grandmaster level and achieving the mythical glory of the immortals, could end up in such a miserable state. Wrong. How could that be? Everyone had watched Zaiyozi progress step by step, witnessing his entire journey. Countless people tried to emulate his path, trying to tap into the world's energy to break through to a new level. Even though they barely scratched the surface of what Zaiyozi had achieved, they still reaped incredible benefits. Now, Zaiyozi was claiming, in a broken voice, that he had been on the wrong path all along. Even though the people of Kyushu were baffled, Zaiyozi in the projection didn't offer any further explanation. It's all wrong, every bit of it. With that, Zaiyozi just dropped that line and left, leaving the people of Kyushu stunned. The scene changed, seemingly skipping ahead several years. This version of Zaiyozi was a far cry from the accomplished figure they once knew. He looked disheveled, often just sitting or lying on the ground. At some point, he had acquired a gourd of wine, which he kept strapped to his waist. He would sleep under the open sky, using the earth as his bed, lost in a drunken slumber. The people of Kyushu were speechless. Was this really Zaiyozi? The old Zaiyozi carried himself with an air of distinction, even in the most mundane settings. That kind of aura wasn't something you could just shed overnight. But now, this Zaiyozi appeared to be completely out of his mind, ignoring the world around him. Did he just get too wasted because he couldn't make the advancement? This thought inevitably crossed the minds of many in Kyushu. There were plenty of people who had fallen into madness after failing to break through to the next realm, but who could have predicted that Zaiyozi, a figure of seemingly unstoppable progress, would end up like this? The old path is wrong, but whose path is right? That just as the people of Kyushu were grappling with disbelief, the drunken Zaiyozi suddenly raised his cup to the sky and murmured. Follow the trend and you won't become an immortal. Become an immortal. Immortal. The murmur, as faint as a dream, echoed clearly across the golden list of the heavenly Tao. Everyone was stunned. You can't become an immortal by following the trends. What did that even mean? But the people of Kyushu didn't have time to ponder. The image on the golden list of the heavenly Tao began to fade, until it finally disappeared. No one understood the meaning hidden within Zaiyozi's drunken words, but everyone in Kyushu understood one thing: Zaiyozi had failed. He sought immortality, preached his beliefs far and wide. Decades had passed, and this was the result. It was a hard pill to swallow. It was like seeing someone completely reject the very belief system that had defined their entire life. At Tianmen, Su Fu's eyes were fixed on Zaiyozi, his expression solemn. He, too, couldn't understand why Zaiyozi had so bluntly declared his path to be wrong at the last moment. But one thing was certain: Zaiyozi was far stronger than him. And to seek immortality, one has to look at it for a very long time. Humph. He's just getting old. After a moment of silence, Su Fu felt a surge of disdain. Ultimately, Zaiyozi had failed and never reached the realm above the Grandmaster level. So, what did he have to fear? Besides, he had phoenix blood coursing through his veins, giving him near limitless vitality. Even if Zaiyozi was slightly stronger, how could he possibly defeat someone with the power of phoenix blood? With that thought, Su Fu felt a sense of relief. Go with the flow, and don't seek immortality. Nearby, Zhang Sanfeng stared at the golden list of the heavenly Tao in a daze, a spark of realization in his eyes. He whispered softly. Go with the flow, and don't. What if you go against it? Chapter 98. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Sanfeng used Tai Chi to fight, truly understanding the keys to victory and defeat. Go with the flow, use softness to overcome hardness, control movement with stillness, and counterattack after being attacked. That's Tai Chi in a nutshell. But, if you can't go with the flow, can you achieve enlightenment by reversing Tai Chi and flipping yin and yang? Qin Dynasty, Zhangtai Palace. Gai Nie was also stunned, glancing at Yingyun almost without thinking. He vaguely remembered the ninth prince saying not long ago that cultivating immortality goes against the will of heaven. Back then, everyone, including Gai Nie, thought it was nonsense. But now, it seems to have a deeper meaning. After all, Zaiyozi spent his whole life going with the flow. He even imitated ancient sages, preaching and teaching, being worshipped by everyone, but in the end, he still failed. Could it be true, like the ninth prince said, that the path to immortality is destined to fight against heaven? Gai Nie was thrown for a loop. Although he was a sword master, immortality felt a million miles away. Still, if he could catch a glimpse of that ultimate realm, how could Gai Nie resist? Immortality? Gai Nie couldn't help thinking of Xiaoyaozi's last words: if his path was wrong, was anyone on the right path? The first and second place on the peerless list. Instinctively, Gai Nie looked up, staring at the heavenly Tao golden list. a spark of excitement ignited inside him, maybe someone really was on the right path. But then, Guy Nia sighed, a little deflated. This Xiao Yaozi was already a once-in-a-generation prodigy. A master at 7. A grandmaster before 20. A true game-changer. But he still ended up like this. Becoming immortal, how crazy difficult is it? Ming Dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang sighed, his expression grave. When Xia Yozi was young, he single-handedly slaughtered countless foreign invaders to end the war. And he'd been caring for the people displaced by the fighting. As someone who'd known the pain of war, Zhu Yuanzhang couldn't help but feel a connection with him. Seeing his tragic end, Zhu Yuanzhang felt a pang of sympathy. Han Dynasty, Liu Bang looked gloomy, staring at the scene in the sky, lost in thought. Tang Dynasty, at that moment, dynasties across Kyushu were stunned, unable to shake off the shock. The heavenly Tao Golden List once again demonstrated its incredible power. Waves of golden light rippled, converging above the sky, and lingered for a long time. Then, a majestic voice echoed in everyone's ears. Young genius, with a mind for freedom. Preaching to the world, a model of immortality. Xia Yozi. Ranked 3rd on the peerless list. Rewarded with the blessing of heaven. This is, the blessing of heaven. Chapter 112, Rebuild your foundation. You can also practice round 2. The blessing of heaven. Endless golden light turned into beams shooting to the sky and landing on top of Tianmen. Boom! Instantly, the entire sky was bathed in gold. Countless Taoist rhymes permeated the air, manifesting into extraordinary phenomena. Like ancient sages preaching and teaching all living things, and strange, luminous flowers and plants bloomed atop Tianmen. Tianmen, Su Fu was speechless. Before him, a flower pulsed with condensed Taoist rhymes. Touching it lightly, it felt real. What kind of power was this? Su Fu glanced at the exotic plants covering Tianmen, even figures resembling saints. He was deeply shaken. Su Fu felt this time, the heavenly Tao's blessing, might be greater than ever. Was this what you got for being 3rd on the peerless list? It wasn't just Tianmen. Dynasties all over Jiuzhou saw the golden light radiating from the sky. Like the sun high in the sky, it gave people a sense of endless expanse. The previous blessings of heaven had also been potent. But dynasties further away had only glimpsed them through the heavenly Tao Golden List. Now, they didn't even need the Golden List, they just had to look up to see the dazzling light. That's the direction of Tianmen. The rewards for the top 3 on the heavenly Tao Golden List must be extraordinary. Like Su Fu, emperors and officials across the dynasties had this same thought. They fell silent, watching the sky, waiting for the heavenly Tao Golden List to speak. Time passed slowly, thousands of golden rays gathered, forming brilliant words that appeared in the void. Heavenly Tao blessing. Retrace. Return to the origin, reshape the foundation. The golden characters hung in the sky, accompanied by the heavenly Tao Golden List's majestic voice, which lingered. Everyone was shocked. It was too simple. Not multiple blessings like before. Just one, retrace. What does this mean? Emperors looked at each other, confused. Rebuild the foundation. Xia Yozi was a master at 7 or 8 years old. How solid was his foundation? Maybe not as good as a heavenly blessing, but not too bad, right? Why did the heavenly Tao Golden List make such a big deal, only to hand out what feels like a useless reward? Even Zhang Sanfeng's lifespan increase, or a skill upgrade. That wouldn't surprise anyone. You could even say it's normal. The heavenly Tao Golden List had that kind of power, but just rebuilding the foundation, wasn't that a little weak? Tianmen, Xia Yozi, lying on the steps, not really caring about the blessing of heaven, was startled, looked up, and seemed lost. You can't become immortal if you go with the flow. Those who become immortal will be rejected by heaven and earth. Xia Yozi thought those who want to become immortals must go against the grain. But that would be unacceptable to heaven and earth. Chapter 99. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's all down to one word, disobedience. If that's the case, what good is even heaven's blessing? It amounts to nothing. The truth is, Zaiyozi had his own ambitions, a desire to rival the gods. But he was on the wrong path from the start. He was never going to reach his goal that way. And now, trying to turn back, he's lost and doesn't even know where he began. How could he possibly fight? He's just worn out. Completely burned out. So, realizing his mistake, Zaiyozi abandoned his quest for immortality overseas. Instead, he wandered and eventually came to Jojo, and as fate would have it, he witnessed the heavenly Tao Golden List appear and saw Su Fu slaughtering to force the peerless warriors to fight. It reminded Zaiyozi of his younger self, so, he stepped in. Not to kill, though, just to stop Su Fu. But now, this word retrospection has stopped Zaiyozi in his tracks. He's realized something. For others in Jojo, rebuilding their foundation is just that, building a foundation. But for him, it's different. Maybe, just maybe, this is his chance to find the right path. Boom! While Zaiyozi is lost in thought, the thousands of golden rays and bizarre images tremble, then merge into his body. It's a clarity he's never experienced before. See, over the years, Zaiyozi has traveled the world, and even with the best intentions, he's been tainted by it. That's why, even knowing he's on the wrong path, he couldn't turn back. Too much baggage, too complicated to describe. But this heavenly blessing has washed away the worldly thoughts in his heart, leaving his spirit pure and untainted, like that young Taoist reciting scriptures in the temple, back in the day. A pure heart. And what shocks Zaiyozi most is that his current power hasn't vanished. He's in a state of nothingness, yet he still possesses the strength of a grandmaster. It's an incredibly mysterious state. So much so that even Zaiyozi himself is stunned, hardly believing it. At Tianmen, Zaiyozi is ecstatic, and through the image of the heavenly Tao Golden List, his image is broadcast throughout countless dynasties, everyone stunned. Rebuilding the foundation is a huge opportunity for anyone in Jojo. But why is Zaiyozi, a grandmaster, so incredibly excited about it? That's right. Excited. Everyone can see it on his usually indifferent face. Who is this guy? A grandmaster. A wanderer of countless years, worshipped as an immortal god. And this is making him so emotional. What gives? For a moment, all of Jojo is baffled. In Daqin, at Zhangtai Palace. Is this round 2? Sensing the changes in Zaiyozi's body, Yingyun is clearly surprised, and he whispers softly. He understands the situation perfectly. If Zaiyozi's life were a video game, then Zaiyozi had already finished the game before receiving the blessing. He just made the wrong choices and got a bad ending. So now he's restarted, playing the second round, only this time, he's got experience, keeps all his levels, and his best gear. It's not a perfect analogy. But it's pretty close to what's happening with Zaiyozi. Can you do that? Looking at the stunned Zaiyozi, Yingyun smirks, even more curious about the Tiandao Golden List. Chapter 113, Tunnel Vision. Gainye's sigh, the scene shifts. There are plenty of sharp minds in Jojo. After a moment of silence, they realize something. Maybe that the foundation, the heavenly Tao Golden List talks about isn't what they thought. After all, just plain old rebuilding the foundation would be completely uninteresting for a grandmaster like Zaiyozi. And based on past experience, the heavenly Tao's blessings aren't like that. Especially the word retracing. What is retracing? Reversing the origin, going back to the past. Could it be about correcting Zaiyozi's past mistakes? That thought sends shivers down the spines of the people of Jojo, and horror spreads across their faces. If so, does it mean Zaiyozi still has a chance to get on the right path? The idea is mind-blowing. After all, they've all seen how powerful Zaiyozi is. Even though he's never fought all out during his travels, his every move resonates with the forces of nature, and now, if Zaiyozi corrects his course, could he become an ancient, legendary immortal? Immortal? The idea is insane. Everyone hesitates, hardly able to believe it. But otherwise, why would he be so excited? Silence falls over Jojo. At Tianmen, in the sky, endless divine light pours down in ripples, flowing into Zayayozi's body. He has risen from the steps, stands with his hands clasped behind his back, and gazes lightly at the sky. His face gradually changes from its aged appearance. Finally, his white hair turns dark blue, cascading over his shoulders, and his youth returns. This isn't just a blessing from heaven, his appearance comes from his heart. The everlasting immortality technique that Zayayozi found in that immortal village was seriously underrated. Most people in Kyushu compared him to Tian Shan Tong Lao to gauge the power of Zayayozi's magic. But if it was so weak, why would Zayayozi value it so much? After all, he created most of the Xiaoyao sex techniques, each is unique. Only this immortality technique did he learn from ancient predecessors, its power is unfathomable. At the very least, Tian Shan Child Elder hasn't understood a fraction of it. That's why Zayayozi doesn't age after mastering it. At least, 1,000 years isn't enough to do the trick. But because Zayayozi's life goal had been denied and his heart was desolate, his hair went gray. Now, his spirit, once stained by the mortal world, is clear again, naturally restoring him to his original form. The moment Zayayozi regains his youth, an aura that is almost beyond the realm of a grandmaster emanates from him. Then, just as quickly, it disappears. It's like suddenly returning to your peak, and your newfound power is briefly uncontrollable. Even grandmasters can barely notice it, it's so subtle, except for a very few individuals in Kyushu, no one notices. But Emperor Shirtian, standing nearby, sees everything, and his face grows even uglier. In this moment, no matter how proud Emperor Shirtian is, relying on phoenix blood, feeling he can look down on anyone in Kyushu, he has to admit he's met his match. Not to mention, Zayayozi's immortality skill has the same effect as his own phoenix blood. Chapter 100. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He's not just strong, he's on another level. And while he's betting the phoenix blood keeps him going for 1,000 years, Zayayozi's current vitality suggests he's got, well, a seriously long lifespan. Bottom line. Zayayozi's pushing past the immortal barrier of me. I'm not even close. He's got me beat across the board. Emperor Shirtian was starting to feel numb. Suddenly, he was hoping this peerless list wouldn't wrap up too fast. How's he ever gonna take down a guy like Zayayozi otherwise? Turns out, Emperor Shirtian wasn't the only one. The emperors of countless dynasties were also watching Zayayozi's figure fade on the heavenly Tao golden list, caught between a rock and a hard place. If they were talking masters or grandmasters, sure, they could find ways to recruit them. But this guy? He's about to break into forbidden territory. They hesitated, maybe try and get on his good side. After a beat, that thought flashed through the minds of dynasty after dynasty. Then, they sent envoys to Tianmen, no questions asked. Zayayozi couldn't care less about what everyone in Jojo was thinking. He just looked up at the blurring scene overhead. He knew the number 2 on the peerless list was about to show up. Who could it be? The question popped into his head. Sure, he's traveled overseas for years, so he's a little out of touch with the local scene, but he's been all over Jojo, and he hasn't run into anyone who could hold a candle to him. Now, the Tiandao Golden ranking is telling him he's only 3rd place. There are 2 people out there who can beat him. Could they be immortals? Zayayozi murmured, staring at the golden list in the sky, a spark of anticipation in his eyes. Immortal. That's basically what he's chasing. Before reaching that level, Zayayozi didn't know what to call it, so he just went with immortal. Immortal, free, easy, unbound, that's what Zayayozi's been after his whole life. And he's still not there. Is it even real? Boom! As Zayayozi's thoughts raced, the sky shifted, and images began to appear. Suddenly, all of Jojo was buzzing. Peerless list, number 2. The thought hit everyone at once, and they were floored. The Qin Zhangtai Palace. Who is this wonder that sits at number 2 on the peerless list? Dudingjing took a deep breath, his eyes locked on the sky, and murmured, now that he's seen Zayayozi, he's not looking to recruit people like him anymore. Zaiyozi's already knocking on the door of the immortal realm. How terrifying must the second and first-ranked people on the peerless list be? It's mind-blowing. Yeah, Guy Nye nodded, agreeing wholeheartedly. Jojo's huge, and there's stuff out there we just can't understand, or even picture, that if it wasn't for the Heavenly Tao Golden List, who'd even know there were beings in the 9 provinces beyond Grandmaster level, pushing towards immortal god status. Guy Nye sighed, adding. In a way, we've been living in a bubble. Usually, saying that would be treason. Who'd dare accuse His Majesty of being narrow-minded? But now, every official nodded, agreeing completely. True enough. Chapter 114 Peerless List Number 2. Seeking defeat, and finding none. Swoosh. The Heavenly Tao Golden Bang swayed above, making a soft chime, like a bell, or an ancient flute, a long, drawn-out sound, like nature's song. Then, ripples spread, mixed with golden light, and Zaiyozi's figure vanished, in its place. Mountains and rivers. Grand, expansive. One glance, and you felt swallowed by its immensity, like wandering the wilderness and realizing how small you are. Unique, even, captivating. But as everyone got lost in the landscape, the scene flickered. Like a waterfall rushing down, suddenly, you were on the ground. Deep valleys appeared, streams snaking through them, birds and deer skipped across the water, playing and having fun. It was paradise. Where is this? Looking at the scene, the emperors of Jojo all wondered the same thing. Sure, it was beautiful and awe-inspiring, but there wasn't a person in sight. Just animals. Most of the scenes shown on the Tiandao Golden List were packed with people, even inside major dynasties. While this didn't give them enough to pinpoint the Peerless List's location, but they could guess a bit. They'd never seen anything like this before. Could the number 2 on the Peerless List be hiding out in some no-man's land, outside any dynasty in Jojo? After all, Jojo's huge, with dangerous zones and valleys beyond the reach of dynasties. Nominally, the dynasties owned them, but they were too dangerous to build cities. Basically, the dynasties used them as natural barriers. Everyone wondered if this peerless creature lived in a place like that, but who could it be? The Qin. This mountain range is super long, maybe thousands of kilometers deep. Yingyun stared at the Heavenly Tao Gold List, surprised, and said. A place this vast isn't common in Kyushu. Only Taiheng, Kunlun, Qinling, a few spots like that. Where could it be? Yingyun was starting to have his doubts. Even reclusive experts wouldn't pick a place so remote, completely cut off from civilization. Even in seclusion, it's hard to be self-sufficient, living alone. Plus, the loneliness, most people couldn't hack it. But this time, the Tiandao Golden List was just weird. There was nobody in sight in that valley. Why would number 2 hide away like that? Daming, Forbidden City, Zhu Yuanzhang frowned, whispering. Could there really be immortals living like gods in the valley? But why pick a place like this? It'd be a pain just to step outside. Zhu Yuanzhang was dead set against believing in immortals, but after Zaiyozi, he was starting to wonder. Now, watching the Tiandao Golden List, he caught himself thinking that way. He figured that even experts wouldn't hide in such a dump, right? Maybe gods were real. Well, in Zhu Yuanzhang's eyes, a place without farmland was a dump, no matter how pretty it was. Zhu Di was a little surprised. He knew exactly what his father was thinking.